Hello, my name is Paul, and I'm talking about A Course in Miracles, and I have a really big topic today, and this topic is gonna blow your mind. We're gonna think on a very big level, the really big picture. So, because most people find themselves, me included, seeming to be in a body, and it seems like our mind is inside our body, and everything that's outside doesn't seem to be part of my mind, and seems to be other people and other stuff, and it seems so big and real and everything. That forms a sort of starting point of assumption in most people's way of looking at the world, where you'll sort of just assume that it's a given that your mind is in your body, and therefore then you start reading the Course and you start reading everything it says, and you sort of put it into that framework, and you kind of keep it in that box of, well, it's saying this, how does this apply to me inside my body? And then you come to conclusions about what it means. And I think that is a big mistake, because here we are sort of starting off on the wrong foot and starting off with an assumption that isn't necessarily part of the Course's teaching. And then because we've taught ourselves so much that we really are a body and we really are in the body, it's hard to let go of those beliefs and hard to see past them, or to kind of wipe the slate clean and sort of start off with a blank canvas and say, we're going to start from the beginning here, we're going to start from scratch. And maybe what the Course is saying is a much bigger scope than the little box that I was kind of interpreting it with and through. Okay, so here we go. Before there was a world, your mind is the size of the universe. You are bigger than this universe. Your Christ mind is unlimited and infinite. It is not bound by space or time. And when you were in that state, you were aware of yourself. You looked upon yourself. You had recognition of who you are. Everywhere you looked, you saw your own being. And everywhere there was yourself. That's a very, very different starting point than starting with I'm stuck in a body and isolated. So you're bigger than this universe. Your mind is like a container in which you start to dream and imagine a universe. So you're this huge, absolutely huge mind, bigger than this world. And within that mind, you start to form a picture which you are imagining with your mind. So like with your own imagination, you should be familiar. Like if I imagine an elephant, the picture of the elephant is inside my mind. So your mind is bigger than the universe. You form the idea of separation and you start dreaming. Your mind goes to sleep and you start to picture and imagine an entire universe, the world you see. And therefore, here's the thing some people will have trouble accepting. All physical objects are your thoughts. all of the forms. Jesus says in the Course, the body can only see forms. So forms are the same thing as physical objects. They are forms, shapes. And actually, I won't talk about the body yet because we'll get to that in a minute. So your great big mind container, which usually was just looking at itself, starts to imagine an entire world, a physical world, in which form is the form of error. Jesus says all forms are forms of error, and that means that because the body's eyes only see forms, the body's eyes are made to only see error, to only look at sin, and to believe that the thing you're looking at is real when in fact it's your imagination. So here we're not talking, I think most people would think in terms of, if you say, I'm dreaming of the world, or I'm projecting the world, or I'm perceiving the world, you always kind of think in terms of looking out from your body, from your mind that's in a body restricted by this small space, and you think the stuff out there, the stuff beyond my body is the stuff I'm looking at. But the Course isn't talking at that level here. It's talking about your freaking huge mind dreaming and imagining separations within itself, which take on the appearance of illusions of there being something coming between you and yourself, a split mind, and forming an obstacle, forming a block to awareness. So now you try to condense this separation idea into the most concrete seeming solid idea you can imagine, to try to make separation real so that your big mind cannot see, and its vision is blocked by sight of form. There's nothing so blinding as perception of form. And that perception of form isn't talking about you in your little body and looking out at the world and being blinded by forms as such. It's talking about your big mind, your bigger than the universe mind. Its vision is blocked by sight of form. It's kind of looking in from the outside in at a world, and the world is blocking its sight. It's getting in the way and coming between itself and itself, creating a block to awareness. Jesus says that all forms are forms of error. Everything the body's eyes see are forms. Therefore, all physical objects that the body's eyes see are errors. The body was made only to look at sin and believe it's real. So you might have this conceptual idea that sin is somewhere off in my mind, or it happened a long time ago, or it's just a concept. No. Physical objects are sin. And if you look at them and you see them with your body's eyes and you believe their illusion is real, and you think that there's something there because the body's eyes were made to stop at the outside edge of nothing, there's not really a world. If you think you're seeing the world, you are blinded by sight of form, because you're looking at sin and you're seeing sin, physical sin. So it's not, a lot of people will think that the Course is all about dealing with your mind and not about the physical world, or I'm going to focus on fixing my perception of the world, or I'm gonna change my inside my body thoughts about what's out there, and that's all I'm supposed to do. And that's a very small picture, a very small interpretation of what the Course is saying here. It's saying that you're so massively big, you are unlimited, and the entire world is inside your mind. Jesus says both heaven and earth are in your mind. And this physical world is the world that you made inside yourself, contained within yourself, bigger than the world, as the idea of separation being real. This is the picture that you've put in your mind as like a imagined picture. The world is a picture of the crucifixion of God's Son. Your big mind is picturing its own crucifixion, and it shows up as the form of separated objects. Physical objects are your thoughts about being separate. Jesus says in the Course, in two places, he says, the world is false perception. And then elsewhere he says, the world is perception. And then all the little body-identified people that are stuck in bodies look out on that world that they think isn't part of their mind, and they think that that means me inside my body-limited mind, separated from the world, is having a false perception of something that's separate and out there. And that's not what that means. Jesus is talking here at a very big level. Your universe-sized mind is picturing what it's like to be separate. Perception is a separated state. Anyone who perceives needs healing, because if you perceive at all, you are inside the separation idea. You're still dreaming, and that even applies to being in the real world and in the true perception, for the forgiven world. You're still dreaming, and Jesus says you have not accepted the atonement if you're still perceiving. You haven't gone all the way to the truth. If you're perceiving at all, it makes you dream. Perception is dreaming, projection of a dream that you then perceive as the result. So your universe-sized mind is having perception, and that perception is making a world, and that world shows up as the physical world in your mind, and it's a world based on error, based on sin, based on separation. It is made as the idea of being totally opposite to heaven and totally opposite to your true nature as the container of this idea. The world is just an idea in your mind. There is no world. And so your mind is having false perception. The big mind, the infinite mind, is looking inside itself with blocking, separating, false perception, which emphasizes separations, focuses on differences, dwells on attack and tries to make attack real, because you have to have attack within this mind in order to split the mind and create what seems to be divisions and separations, which produces forms. Differences are forms. Physical objects are all different. And so it pictures in a very false way. It doesn't just There's true perception and there's false perception, but your mind doesn't just sort of generally perceive a world. It actually goes straight to false perception. And it's not even perception of a world. It's actually the broadcasting of a world. You project the world and then you perceive it. Projection makes perception. Your universe-sized mind is projecting an image of a physical world and then is perceiving it as if it's real. And because it makes a world in false perception, it doesn't make a beautiful world, it makes hell. It's the idea of there being a complete opposite to heaven's nature, totally separate from, opposed to, rejecting, in denial of, doesn't want to be like heaven. And so you make hell. And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying you make a place where there's fire and brimstone and terrible things, people being burnt forever. That's a bullshit story that people made up. But the physical world is hell. And it was made by the universe-sized mind to picture death. Death is the attempt to crucify God's Son. And so this world was made as the idea of a split mind against its own will, opposing the nature of heaven, having wills that are opposite and in conflict, producing war, and resulting in death. And this is why the physical world introduced the idea of an opposite to heaven, and therefore pictured what would it be like if there was an opposite to heaven, and created an image where there were two things. There was seeming to be heaven and hell coexisting as equal opposites. This is the physical world. In the physical world, in false perception, there are differences, there are contradictions, there is self-denial, there is two-facedness, because, as Jesus says, sometimes the world gives only to take away. The world produces flowers and blooms and things in summer, and then fall comes along and everything dies. Because the world is a contradiction in terms, and it pictures the idea of opposition, so like a fight, a conflict between polarities. That's what produces duality. Duality is this sort of state, this imaginary state where you think that there are both good things and bad things, heavenly things and evil things, things that seem to live and things that seem to die, coexisting in the same space. It's a world of duality, which is based on I want to be in conflict with myself and attack myself. And Jesus says that a world that attacks itself and denies its own existence cannot exist, and it cannot have been created by God. And this world does that. It attacks itself and it denies existence. You, as the universal mind, exist. This world that you're dreaming inside yourself is the idea that you don't exist. It's an attempt to deny and block your reality and render you as if you are a picture of being made not to exist. It's a denial of yourself, and self-denial leads to death. Death is the end result of this idea of sin, which is the idea that separation is real, and that's based on the illusion that separation is possible. And so now, as Jesus says, the body's eyes can only see illusions. They were only made not to see the universal mind. They were only made to fixate on forms of error and sin and make them seem real and have false perception permanently. So you as the universal mind, the great big mind, dreamed of this entire physical world and then made a little body on the surface of the planet and put your part of your mind into that body, and now looks out on the dream that your bigger mind is dreaming and looks at it and fixates on the ways in which it looks different, and the differences seem true and real and convincing to believe that this dream illusion is reality. The body's eyes deceive you. That's why you made them, because you on the universal level made this universe and this world and the body, and God did not create the body, and wanted to do that, to have a device for hiding from awareness. The body is a block to awareness. The world is a block to awareness. So people are thinking, well, the blocks to awareness that I have are in my mind, in my body, which is a separation idea. It's ego isolation, being excluded from the world and separated off in a body, and then believing that's your natural habitat and interpreting the whole course from that perspective is a mistake. So you at the big level said, I want to make a solid seeming image of a planet, and I want to put myself in it and peer through its eyeballs in such a way that it's inside a box and it's only allowed to look at the interior of this image that I'm holding in my big mind, so that I will only see a dream world and take it to be the only reality, not realizing that it's completely fictional, it's an illusion that my universe-sized mind is dreaming of. And Jesus talks in the Course about reason and seeing sense, and he says that you can literally see sense, you can see reason, you can actually look with a state of mind that's sane and reasonable and that has correct reasoning, and that when this reason looks at the images that the body is telling you is out there and sends to your mind, reason overlooks the form of errors. Your reason should tell you that the world doesn't make sense, in the same way that a sick body doesn't make any sense. It's nonsense. Your reason and your sense, your sanity, when things make sense and they're really sensible and sane, you look at these images of physical forms, your reason can see past them and through them. And it recognizes that forms are errors. It recognizes that physical objects are pictures of sin that are trying to tempt you. Jesus says the world was made to tempt you, trying to tempt you to believe that they're real, when in fact they're not. And so now what that means is not just that you're going to overlook the little ideas within your mind about the world. Your mind is the size of the universe. Your mind that is that big through the body needs to be able to see past the physical universe. Your reason and your correct true perception is supposed to look at this image of death, this dream of death, and not believe it and not have it registered to you as real. Your mind is supposed to get to where you put everything that your body sees into a category of it's unreal, it's false. I recognize that I'm the dreamer of the universe, and I can see and remember and be aware that it is coming from my mind as the size of the universe. And therefore, when I look at this constructed, strange world that you made, which is opposite to heaven in every way, when I look at that from the outside, not tempted by it, not believing its temptation, you will simply calmly recognize this is just false. This is just something I made up. This is a lie. This isn't the truth. I admit that this is not the truth. This is not real. I invented it. I made it myself. God didn't have anything to do with making it. And it has no value. It has no further purpose. And therefore I don't need it. That's the end of the world. The world will end in laughter because it's a place of sorrow. So it's made of sorrow. So when the laughter comes, the sorrow disappears. Therefore the world that was made of sorrow as a place of sorrow is no longer there. And this is the Course's big teaching, that it seems like a lot of people are still very resistant to this, and I don't fully accept it myself, but I can understand why it makes sense. There is no world. You are the size of the universe, and you're dreaming of a world. You've made it up. It's the world you made. It's the world you see. But it's not really there. It's the outside form of nothingness. And so this is all just fiction of bodies and surfaces and images and appearances and solidity and forces and physics and things seeming to happen. That is all coming from your mind at the big level, beyond the scope of your body. So quite literally, and this is the kind of the radical part of it, the physical world is in your mind, and all of its objects and forms are your belief in sin. It's your belief that separation is real, is taking the form of trees and buildings and people. Your thought of being separate from the massive unlimited God is taking on an appearance of an illusion that isn't real and isn't possible, of an entire planet. You are thinking a planet. You're dreaming of a planet. In fact, you're dreaming of a whole universe. All the other planets and all the stars and galaxies are also part of what you're picturing within your unlimited mind. This car is in my mind. And that doesn't mean in here, inside the body, where the mind seems to be trapped. If my mind wasn't trapped in my body, and I was aware that I'm the dreamer of the universe, I would see clearly that I put that car down there, and I put those cars there too, and those buildings, and those hills and mountains. Because if you're mind, you are the mind, you are the universe mind. When you have thoughts in that mind of ideas of separation rather than oneness and wholeness, it creates illusions of separation and division that show up as images, just as in your imagination right now, your little small imagination, where you can imagine a red ball, or I can imagine a tree, or I can imagine some ice cream. As I imagine it, I make an image of a three-dimensional object that looks like a real object. And the same thing happens at nighttime. When you have your nighttime dreams, your mind makes a world. Your mind dreams of, your big mind, the whole of your mind dreams of an entire environment, complete with buildings and people and weather and animals and vegetation and a seeming history. You make all this stuff up spontaneously, including making another body in your dream. Like you're dreaming at night, here's your body, here's your mind having a dream. Inside there, you've made up another body. And so your little dream body is walking around inside your physical body's mind, inside a bigger dream. And then you think that you are only that body. So now in that dream, you think, I'm just this body that's walking around in this environment. I didn't put it there. But Jesus says that you think that the world was here before you came, and that you're just discovering a world that existed, that it's subjectively real, when in fact you saw what you wanted to see before you came, because your universe-sized mind wanted to see a world of death and separation, and then came into it and saw it because it wanted there to be one. And so it made one. And I'm sitting here wondering how that's possible, because I seem to be stuck inside a little body, and there's an entire landscape around that I don't seem connected to, and I don't seem to have any psychological connection with, like, as if I can do anything to change it with my mind, because I've made a really convincing illusion that it's not possible in order to cover up the fact that I'm dreaming it. Ideas leave not their source. Therefore, you can only experience something that's inside your mind. Whatever idea you have, it cannot leave your mind. The same as you, as an idea and a thought from God, cannot leave God's mind. You can't get outside of yourself. So anything that you can perceive or experience or touch or think is real has to be inside your mind. So if I'm sitting here and I've got a body and there's an entire landscape outside the car that seems like it's not in me, that's an illusion, because it's not possible for me to experience and be in the same space as this world unless both of these things are inside my mind. Ideas don't leave their source. So every idea that you can ever experience, every experience you can ever have, has to be contained inside your mind. So if you're experiencing a physical world, you must be bigger than the world. You have to be the container of what you experience. Otherwise, there's no way that your mind can experience it, because then you're sort of saying, here's my mind, and it's contained, and then there's like a gap, and then there's other stuff, but this other stuff is now outside of your mind. It can't get inside your mind, so your mind is blind to it. It's contained inside its little bubble. Over here is this supposed illusion of something separate. It can't be separate if you're going to experience it or perceive it or know that it's there. It has to be in your mind. The two experiences, or the perceiver and the perceived, or the split mind of consciousness, has to contain everything that you are conscious of. So this physical world has to be inside your mind in order for you to experience it. Therefore, your mind has to be bigger than the universe. Jesus says, both the earth and heaven are in your mind. The atonement is when your awareness becomes so expanded, far beyond your physical body. The body cannot contain you who are loved. Your physical body cannot contain the universe-sized mind. Because if it did, now you've put the whole universe-sized mind into this body. Who's responsible for the freaking world that's out there? Where is that being hosted? That's inside your mind too. So your mind has to be really, really big. And that means that all of you cannot be isolated into a part of the thing that you're imagining exists as the whole world. You have to be the container of it in order to experience it, so it must be smaller than you. So your physical body can't host the whole of you. There was only a small part of your mind that was fenced off and separated off from the rest of your mind and finds itself to be in your body. It's only a small part of your mind. It's not the whole of you. Got a visitor. I got a thing. Anyway, it's almost time to stop. So you fenced off a small portion of the universal mind and put it into a body, but there's other parts to the rest of you that your split mind is separated from, that's the size of the universe, which is why you cannot experience the whole of yourself in a body. In order to experience directly the whole of what you are as a infinite, unlimited being, omnipresent, is that you have to first of all get out of the forms, see past the forms, have vision that overlooks physical objects. The spiritual eye is a different mechanism for seeing. Only the mind really sees. The physical body cannot look at Christ. The physical body cannot look outside the dream. Physical body can only see the world from the inside. Therefore, you need a different kind of vision, a spiritual vision that comes from outside of the dream, outside of the world, and looks with spiritual vision, a spiritual eye that can see through everything that you would put in the way, that can literally look through physical forms as transparent, as just a very thin veil of illusion that's barely even there. That's what you get to when you're in true perception and you're just about ready to get back to heaven, back to the fullness of awareness. You see the dream as barely noticeable. The forms of objects have become transparent. You can see through the world. You have X-ray vision, literally. Well, not X-rays, but you know. And this world goes from being seeming to be very solid and can't see past the granite block of sin, which the body's eyes can't see past, but instead your spiritual vision ignores what the body sees and sees through what the body sees and sees beyond what the body sees, because what you're trying to see out there is what you've been separated from yourself. The other side of your own mind is beyond physicality, which comes between you and yourself. This world is your split mind. The physical world is the split in the mind, and it must be healed, and it must be shone away, and the spiritual eye, real vision, must return to being able to look from the universe level perspective upon this dream, with a whole vision which is loving, that recognizes that this is just a dream. It's not true, it's false, it's an illusion that you made. God did not create it. It is not real. It's completely unreal. It doesn't really exist. And as the world transitions in your awareness from solid matter to becoming thinner and lighter and more transparent, it gradually dissipates from your awareness like a cloud that's just dissolving away, just a puff of smoke. And once it's completely disappeared, when there is no world and the earth does not turn into heaven, it doesn't exist. There's nothing to turn into heaven. Heaven stays the way it was. Your one mind self is already perfect. You cannot add anything to the kingdom of God that is anything other than the creation of beings of love. Jesus says you're not supposed to have that arrogance to think that you could have added anything to the perfection of heaven other than more perfection. With the world you made was not a good idea. And so your vision, your literal seeing, when it sees sense and it sees reason, it must and will overlook bodies. This is forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't just about, I'm going to forgive that person for what they did to me and I'm going to change my perception and blah, blah, blah. Yes, you are. But in the big picture, forgiveness means the same thing as the atonement and the same thing as salvation. And it means my mind, which sees, is going to ignore what the body is lying to me about and is going to look through and past the illusion of physical form, recognize that it is completely unreal, and go beyond it to see the face of Christ, which is yourself, which is what you were seeing before you dreamed of the world. You were looking upon yourself. And in that view, this world literally is recognized as not being real, and it doesn't really exist. It's just an image in your mind. Then the body disappears. It disappears. It doesn't end in death. A dream of death does not end in death. It ends in truth. The truth sets you free from believing that the dream is really happening. You're not really a body. I'm not a body. I am free, because bodies don't exist. The world will spin into the nothingness from which it came. Together with Jesus, we will watch the world disappear. The world will end in joy and laughter, because once you go past the world, you get back to the state of happiness in which there is no world. Heaven is the only reality. Heaven remains the one alternative to the strange world that your universe-sized mind made that doesn't exist. This is the Course's main teaching, that there is no world because you made it up. You're dreaming of a world that doesn't exist and it's not really there. And when you do believe that it exists and you believe it's real and you're looking at it, you are blinded by sight of form, and you're unconscious, and you're not being the whole of yourself. So when you really get this into the right perspective and framework, and realize that Jesus is talking about a really huge level, big, gigantic picture here, in which your mind is bigger than this universe, it frames correctly everything that he says and teaches, and sheds new light on it, and reveals things that people might not want to believe is true, such as that physical objects are sins, their thoughts in your mind of death and separation, there is no world. It all just fits perfectly into perspective when you're starting from the right foundation, which is that you are unlimited being. You are one with God. You are bigger than the world. You're bigger than the universe. And that's the base, that's the starting point from which all the rest of the metaphysics is based and makes sense and fits together perfectly. So we have to learn how not to believe that this world is real. We have to overlook it. We have to forgive it. Forgiveness doesn't mean I'm going to keep looking at the form of physical objects and be in love with them. That's special love. That is denial. It is not the Course's teaching, nor is it that you're supposed to get to heaven on earth and stay there. The earth can seem as a reflection of heaven's holiness when seen from a state of almost being aware of your universe mind, looking at it with so much purity and reason that you cannot attack it, and you don't judge it, and you don't hate it. And it seems like it's just a beautiful idea in your mind. The world just seems like a nice, happy dream, a beautiful sights and sounds reaching the mind. It just seems innocent. It seems holy, but it's still a dream. And so long as you have perception of it, you're still dreaming. So long as you perceive it, you're not in the atonement. And so long as there seems to be a world here, you are not being your unlimited universe-sized mind. You're still trapped in the dream. So the Course in Miracles, it's not all about I am a body, I have a body-sized mind, and everything is put into that kind of context and perspective, like not a body, I am free, would then seem to mean I am this little mind that's in my body, but I'm not this body. And that's the limit of awakening. That's way short of I am not a freaking universe, I'm bigger than the universe. It's an entire different level of awakening. And some people have got to a place where they seem to have awareness in the body, of a certain kind of awareness that they're not the body. But how about realizing that there's no world and no universe, and that you're the size of the universe? Myself is ruler of the universe. Nothing happens in the universe that I have not asked for with my universe mind. Only the things that happen are what I want to happen in my dream from my universe-sized mind. And I get everything I've asked for, everything I wanted to make in my picture of crucifixion. I've got it. I chose it, including death. And so we literally, as we heal our mind, it has to heal the world, and that means healing the world away. The world is a symptom of sickness. Physical forms are sickness. The body is sickness. And in the bigger context, I know there's statements talking about the body's holy and the body can't be sick, but the body is, in a bigger picture, the body is sickness because it's based on separation in form, and it cannot exist when there is perfect, unlimited, eternal life. It cannot contain eternal life. It's not made of it. It's made of illusions. The body is a dream. So we have to sort of expand our ideas a bit here and look at the very big picture and not just the little, I'm just a separate little person living in a separate world and the world's separate and the body's separate and I'm just this little mind back here lurking in the body, interpreting everything the Course says from that viewpoint. Huge, gross mistakes in perception of the Course and what it means come from that. We've got to start seeing ourselves from a universe-sized perspective and reading what Jesus says from that level and realizing that that is the level of truth about us and not I'm some awakened body thing. A body-sized tiny little speck of a thing on the surface of a massive blob of crap. So there you have it. This world is in your mind. It is your thinking. This world is your perceiving. Your big universal mind is perceiving, and it's perceiving showing up as these images of these objects. These are your thoughts around you, outside your body. These are your thoughts. Blows your mind. There is no world. You are infinite reality. Peace.